My biggest dream, I can't remember. It was so big, like I couldn't remember it. I was in like a pool of SpaghettiOs and I was swimming in it, and like a meatball got lodged in the back of my esophagus.
Horst Christian Simcoe, aka Riff Raff, born January 29th, 1982. When I think about some of the most original artists hip-hop has ever produced, this might come as a surprise, but Riff Raff is honestly one of the first names that comes to mind. Not because he sold the most records or dominated the charts, but because he always seemed to completely be comfortable being himself. At a time when so many artists were chasing trends, he showed up looking like nobody else, rapping like nobody else, and moving through the industry at his own pace. I've always respected that. It would have been easy to lean into the comparisons that came with being a white rapper during that era, but instead he built an identity that was unmistakably his own. The funny thing is, an artist like Riff Raff probably should have been easy to dismiss. The colorful braids, the grills, the outrageous interviews, and the over-the-top personality all sound like they should have come across as a gimmick. Yet somehow they never did. Whether you liked his music or not, he always felt authentic. I can't remember hearing many people accuse him of disrespecting hip-hop or pretending to be something he wasn't. He knew his lane and he stayed in it. That's why I can't look at Riff Raff's career as a disappointment. Plenty of artists would trade places with someone who's managed to build a loyal following and make a career out of rap for more than 20 years. To me, that's a success. But I've also always wondered why someone this memorable never became a genuine rap superstar. He had the personality, the originality, and a brand people instantly recognized. So what kept Riff Raff from becoming one of the biggest names in hip-hop? What happened? Let's talk about it. Salute to Strangechild_music, aka my man Backpack Brendan on IG for this request. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth Music. Let's get it, man. Like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know who I should do next. Riff Raff is a rapper from Houston, Texas, whose journey into music looked nothing like the traditional path to stardom. Basketball was actually his first love. He played shooting guard at Langham Creek High School before dropping out during his senior year and later earning his GED. He later attended Hibbing Community College in Minnesota, where he briefly played basketball before returning to Houston. Back home, he painted cars in the city's popular candy-colored style while slowly building the colorful identity that would later become synonymous with his name. Around 2005, Riff Raff began recording music, pressing homemade CDs, and selling them throughout the Houston area, while uploading freestyles, skits, and performances to MySpace, YouTube, and WorldStar Hip Hop. Looking back, I think that's one of the things that made him different. He wasn't sitting around waiting for a record deal. He was putting himself in front of people any way he could, slowly creating an audience before the industry ever knew what to make of him. His first major break came in 2009 after appearing on MTV's From G's to Gents. Although he was eliminated in just the second episode, his personality was impossible to ignore. The exposure led to collaborations with Simon Rex and eventually the comedy rap group 3 Loco. A short-lived affiliation with Soulja Boy's SODMG followed, before finding a better fit with Diplo's Mad Decent. By 2014, after years of mixtapes, viral videos, and internet buzz, anticipation for his debut studio album Neon Icon was surprisingly high. It finally felt like one of hip-hop's most unique personalities was on the verge of becoming one of its biggest stars. Stunt number 1, he became bigger than the music. Looking back, I honestly think one of the biggest things that held Riff Raff back was also the very thing that made him famous. Somewhere along the way, the character became bigger than the music. That's not to say he couldn't rap. Anybody who's actually listened to his catalog can hear his clever punchlines, Houston influence, and a style that was uniquely his. But if you ask the average person about Riff Raff in 2013 or 2014, chances are they describe his appearance before they mentioned a single song. They'd remember the neon braids, the grills, the tattoos, the outrageous interviews, and the over-the-top confidence. His image became one of the most recognizable in hip-hop, but it also became the conversation. The internet played a huge role in that. Riff Raff came up during a time when YouTube clips, WorldStar videos, and viral moments could spread faster than an album ever could. Every interview felt unpredictable. Every freestyle became a meme. Even people who had never intentionally listened to his music knew exactly who he was. that's a rare accomplishment, but it can also become a trap. By the time Neon Icon arrived in 2014, there was legitimate excitement surrounding the project. Rolling Stone even included it on its list of the year's most anticipated albums. The features were impressive as well, with names like Mac Miller, Childish Gambino, Mike Posner, for those who can remember him, and Amber Kaufman appearing on the tracklist. On paper, it looked like the moment Riff Raff would finally prove he was more than just an internet personality or the next gimmick to soon fade. The album was well received by many of his core fans and debuted inside the Billboard 200, but it never became the commercial breakthrough some expected. In my opinion, a lot of people had already made up their minds about him before pressing play. They saw the character first and the artist second. Once that perception settles in, it's incredibly difficult to change. Ironically, that's the price of creating one of the most unforgettable images in rap. Riff Raff succeeded in making sure nobody confused him with anybody else, but in doing so, the spectacle sometimes overshadowed the music itself. For an artist trying to become a mainstream star, that's a difficult hill to climb because eventually people have to come back for the songs, not just the personality. Stunt number 2, he refused to become somebody else. One thing I've always admired about Riff Raff is that he never seemed desperate to fit in. A lot of artists spend their careers trying to convince people they belong. Riff Raff never really did that. Whether you thought he was one of the coolest people in hip-hop or one of the weirdest, he never changed who he was to win people over. I respect that, but I also think it came with a price. Hip-hop has always rewarded originality, but usually within certain boundaries. The biggest stars still have something that's familiar. Riff Raff didn't. He wasn't trying to be the next Houston street rapper, he wasn't making conscious rap, he wasn't chasing radio records, and despite being white, he never leaned into the lane that so many people expected from white rappers after Eminem's success. Instead, he built a colorful, eccentric world that only made sense if you accepted it on his terms. The problem is mainstream audiences don't always meet artists on their terms. More often than not, they expect the artist to meet them halfway. Even when Riff Raff signed to Diplo's Mad Decent and later partnered with major label distribution for Neon Icon, his music never felt like it was chasing the charts. Songs like How to Be the Man, Tiptoeing in My Jordans, and Dolce & Gabbana sounded exactly like something Riff Raff would make. There wasn't some dramatic reinvention designed to produce a top 10 hit. Whether that was intentional or not, it reinforced what had already attracted his core fans. He was making music for the people who understood Riff Raff, not for people who needed convincing. Plenty of artists become stars by adjusting just enough to reach a wider audience. Riff Raff seemed content letting the audience come to him instead. The downside is that your ceiling becomes much lower. Ironically, the thing that kept him from becoming one of rap's biggest stars may also be the reason he's still respected today. More than 20 years after he started rapping, nobody can honestly say Riff Raff sold out or abandoned the identity that made him unique. He stayed true to himself from beginning to end. He may have sacrificed superstardom in the process, but he never sacrificed authenticity. That's a trade-off most artists talk about making. Riff Raff is one of the few who actually did. Stunt number 3, he found success outside of stardom. I think the last piece of Riff Raff's story is realizing that he eventually stopped chasing the definition of success that everyone else was measuring him by. Somewhere along the way, it felt like he accepted that he didn't have to be Drake, Lil Wayne, or Future to have a successful career. He just had to be Riff Raff. That's a mentality a lot of artists never reach. Once Neon Icon came and went without turning him into a mainstream star, plenty of people probably expected the attention around him to fade. Instead, he just kept working, more mixtapes, more independent albums, more tours, and more collaborations. He never disappeared because he never built his career around needing a hit record every couple of years to stay relevant. I've always found that refreshing. There's artists who spend their entire career trying to recreate one magical moment. Every album becomes an attempt to get back to who they used to be. Riff Raff never gave that impression. He always seemed more interested in making the next project rather than mourning the last one. Whether an album sold well or not, he already moved on to the next idea. In a weird way, that mindset probably cost him mainstream visibility. The music industry loves comeback stories, redemption arcs, and artists desperately fighting to reclaim the spotlight. Riff Raff never really played that game. He continued releasing music for the people who already understood him, instead of constantly trying to convince new listeners. That's why when people ask why he never became a rap superstar, I don't think it was because he wasn't talented enough. I also don't think it was because he lacked originality. If anything, he may have had too much of it. He created such a specific world that not everyone wanted to live in it, but the people who did stayed loyal. And maybe that's the lesson I take away from his career. We spend so much time measuring artists by platinum plaques, Grammy Awards, and #1 albums that we forget there's other ways to win. Riff Raff built a recognizable brand, earned the respect of a loyal fan base, collaborated with artists across hip-hop, and has continued making music on his terms for over 20 years. No, he never became one of rap's biggest stars, but considering how few artists get to stay true to themselves while making a living doing what they love for 2 decades, I'd say Riff Raff's career turned out a lot better than people give it credit for. All in all, I don't think Riff Raff's career should be viewed through the lens of what he didn't become. I think it's more impressive to appreciate what he actually accomplished. For over 20 years, he's made a living being exactly who he wanted to be. He never chased another artist's blueprint, never abandoned the personality that made him unique, and never seemed interested in changing just to satisfy the mainstream. I honestly respect that. Sure, he never became one of rap's biggest superstars, but not every successful career has to end with the same measurable accolades. Sometimes success is creating your own lane, building a loyal fan base, and still being relevant decades later without sacrificing your identity. That's exactly what Riff Raff did. He may not have reached the commercial heights some expected, but he proved that authenticity can have a longer shelf life than popularity. And in today's music industry, that's a legacy worth celebrating. Salute, much respect. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth Music, and I'm out.